Hey guys, it's Mary and welcome back to Study Journey. Welcome to episode 6 of Hangman in the Python series. So in the last episode, we have already talked about the 3 helper functions, and now we're going to be moving on to user-computer interaction. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, make sure to watch those first. They are all in this playlist, and without further ado, let's get on with the video. Last few episodes, we have finished writing the first 3 helper functions, so now we're going to talk about game architecture and also user-computer interaction. So I'm going to open my folder of CS Practice because this is where all of my Hangman files are. I'm going to open Hangman files, which is where I saved everything, and open the instructions. So in the instructions, as we can see, it says that Hangman Part 2 of the game is going to be talking about the game requirements. So it says, now you have built some useful functions, you can turn to implementing the function Hangman, which will take on the parameter, the secret word. I'm going to go back to my folder and then open Hangman episodes, which is where I wrote all of my code for the previous episodes. And then now that we have this, I can look at the Hangman function that we wrote before. Okay, so it says calling the Hangman function starts up an interactive game of Hangman between the user and the computer. In designing your word, you should take advantage of the 3 helper functions that you have written in the previous parts. And when we are looking at the game requirements, we can see the first part was game architecture, which says that the function for loading the word list and selecting a random word have already provided for you in hangman.py, and this is what we copied over in the beginning of the first episode. And then it says the user to start with 6 guesses. So when we go down here, we can see that the remaining guesses was equal to 6. At the start of the game, let the user know how many letters the computer's word contains and how many guesses he or she starts with. And that is what we did right here when it says you have blank guesses left. And then after that, the computer should keep track of the remaining letters and print it out as available letters. And this is our 3rd helper function up here. So we have completed the game architecture. So now we're just going to go down and look at the user-computer interaction. So it says that the game must be interactive and flow as follows. So before each guess, you should display to the user and remind the user how many guesses he or she has left after each guess, and then all of the letters the user has not yet guessed. So this is what we did right here with how many guesses left and the available letters. Now you ask the user to supply 1 guess at a time, so the current guess input. And then after each guess, you should let the user know whether or not the letter is in the computer's word. And then after each guess, you should also display to the user the computer's word with guessed letters displayed and unguessed letters with the underscore space. So this is where we're going to be using the 2nd helper function, which is the get guess word. And then at the end, you should print some dashes to help separate the individual guesses from each other. So we're going to have to update these as it says in the instructions. So this is what the game should look like. And if we run this game right now, let's see what it says. So if we go to our terminal, remember when we open my Finder, we can see that the folder CS Practice is the Hangman episodes file. So to go into the folder, we say cd and then CS Practice. To enter the file, we say Python3 because it is a Python file, and then the name of the file, which for me is Hangman episodes, and then .py. And it says you have 6 guesses left, so these 2 are correct, and it says please guess a letter. So when I guess a letter, it says is letter guessed is not defined in line 103. And this is because in the beginning, we wrote our function as is letters guessed instead of is letter guessed. And these little distinctions mean a lot when in code. So we're going to update this and then run it again. So when we guess the letter, it says good guess and then the letter. So let's compare this to the instructions. As we can see, it says the instructions, you have this and then guess the letter. So this is correct. But then when it says good guess, it prints out the word after the good guess. And then it gives you dashes underneath before the next round. So let's guess another letter that is not in it. So if it's not in the word, it should also print the letter after it instead of underneath it. So this is because when we say our guess word, we printed it after the while loop. So to change this, we're going to have to print get guess word after this. So we're going to add a colon after the good guess, and then we're going to copy the get guess word. So after the quotations, we're going to do comma and then get guess word. And then here we're going to do the same for the oops, that letter is not in my word. So comma, and then copy this over. Now we can delete this because this is no longer in use. Command S, save it. And then we're going to Control C to exit it out, and then guess again. And then this is correct. Now we just had to print the dashes underneath it. So after we print the words, oops, that letter is not guessed. After this, we are going to print out a string of dashes. So in quotes, we're just going to add some dashes and then close it. And then we're going to go back to our terminal and then rerun it. So if it is A, it says good guess. However, the letter does not show up even though it says good guess. So this is because when we look here, the letters guessed is after this. So we are not updating the letter before we actually print it out. So now we have to move this line before we use it. And then put it right after current guess. This is because before we had the get guess word after, so this was still before. So now that we moved the get guess word up, we also have to move the letters guessed up. Now let's run it again and see if it works. So if we print A, it says good guess, and it looks identical to what we have over here. If I guess the letter that is not in the word, then it says, oops, that is not in my word in this. And then remember, we set the secret word to Apple for right now instead of having it be a computer generated word. So now that we have this code set up and it looks identical to what we have over here, we can move on to the next step. So in this episode, we have finished the part 2 of the game Hangman. We have completed the game architecture and then the user-computer interaction. So in the next episode, we will be talking about the user input requirements. Alright guys, that is going to be it for today's video. We have talked about user-computer interaction, and in the next episode, we're going to be moving on to user input requirements. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.